welcome to The Person Everyone Needs. I'm Webb Hoggard, and today in my studio in my house at the kitchen table, I've got my good friend Greg Hubbard with me. Greg Hubbard is a phenomenal evangelist. He is preaching the gospel all over the world, and I'm just so excited to have him. I got connected with him through a good friend down in Florida. He was roommates with a good friend of mine down in Florida who's on with the Lord now, Bob Peters, and I'm so grateful for this connection. I'm so very thankful that he's been ministering in our church, and so I look forward to having Greg on this podcast today. What I've asked him to talk about is what we talk about every time. We talk about the person that everyone needs. So Greg, as someone who is regularly traveling all around the world, doing ministry in different places, I mean, you're super old as well. So, yeah. So you've got a lot of experience in the things that people are looking for. I want to ask you, do you mind talking to us a little bit about what you have found all around the world and all the ministry that what are the qualities of what every person needs?
Great to be with you today, Pastor Webb. Thank you for letting me be with you on your podcast. And to answer your question, the first thing that comes to my mind, what every person needs, I think of David in 2 Samuel 9, when out of nowhere, he just looked at his servant and said, is there anyone in Saul's household that I can show kindness to? And one of the things that we find out wherever we travel, that there's a world starving for somebody to be kind to them. I know that sounds so basic, but I love that story in 2 Samuel when the word came back to David that there was a man named Mephibosheth and that was crippled in both feet, was living in Lodabar. And we find it in our travels that there's many people living in the land of Lodabar, which is a dark place. It's a lonely place. And when David heard that he was in Lodabar, crippled in both feet, dropped in, was just a little boy, when word came that his father and grandfather had died, King David said, unknown to Mephibosheth, there he is living in a dark, hopeless place of Lodabar. But far away, the king said, I want to show him kindness. Go get Mephibosheth and bring him home. People are starving for kindness.
Wow, that's excellent. Everywhere you go, they just want somebody to look. What does kindness look like, Greg?
Yeah, I think depending on the need, kindness can look like a lot of different things. I think of, Zimbabwe, Africa, kindness would be maybe a water well where people can just have fresh water every day. When I think of Romania, where we're going to in a couple of weeks, we'll spend mornings just going to the homes of the elderly that are sick and forgotten, broken and hurting. And kindness for them, they don't need $1 million. They need someone to sit by them and hold their hand and let them know that they matter.
I think the first thing that popped in my head when you said that was attention.
Exactly.
I mean, you just got done preaching in chapel, and the moments you spent talking to those young people, they'll never forget the moment you looked at them. Well, you noticed them. They appreciate the connection that you make and attention. I also think it's very important for us to realize that there are needs in the world. People with clean water, like what a blessing it can be if we can be a part of helping that kind of thing. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found somebody that has nothing to offer?
Well, I've never met anyone that has nothing to offer, but I've met many people who think they have nothing to offer. And I think the wonderful thing about showing just acts of kindness, just basic, simple acts of kindness, anybody can do that. For someone to smile, it's just like you said, showing some attention. It's letting someone know that, again, they're cared for and that they matter. And so this is where we love challenging young people and adults and challenging myself that every day there's a world around us.
Yeah.
I remember hearing, I'm not a makeup person. I don't know a lot about Mary Kay, but I remember someone telling me that Mary Kay, I guess the makeup guru, she would tell her salespeople that everyone carries an invisible sign around their neck that says, somebody please make me feel special today. And if we do that, our lives are going to be full, just loving people around us.
Yeah, making them feel special.
Yeah.
What was the phrase you said? What was the quote?
A visible sign saying, somebody please make me feel special today.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Man, if we could do that, could we see our own value? I've been impressed in your messages this week, Greg, the idea that we are very valuable in the eyes of God, but our value is based in being the people of God, not in the individual. The impact that we make in the church it's all of us together that makes an impact. How do you help people understand their intrinsic value without heightening their level of responsibility to the point that it also creates anxiety? Does this make sense? Like where I say to someone, you're very important, somebody needs you, you're valuable.
Yeah.
How we should have the responsibility of taking that value and blessing others, but how do we not put pressure on ourselves? Because it seems like there's two different types of people.
Yeah.
People who don't have value and people who are anxious.
Right. Yeah.
Is this making sense?
Yeah.
How do we break through that? You seem like a very unanxious person.
Well, I have things I deal with like everybody, you know, and I'm actually a little bit anxious right now.
Are you?
No, I'm just kidding. But you know what? I think it's walking in grace, because everyone, you know, God's made us all, obviously, but each of us have a different constitution, our makeup, what we've experienced. Some have gone through trauma. Some have gone through all kind of different things. I think it's God, help me to be sensitive to know where somebody's at, not just to have like a cookie cutter mentality, how we minister to people or challenge people, but to say, God, give me your heart for that person where they're at, to be able to speak life to them, for God to open up their world for how God can use them.
Right.
And again, I think of the challenge we have with some of the kids over in India who've been born out of human trafficking. Some of them think, what kind of future can I have? How can God ever? You just can't say, hey, just go for it. You know, God's got something. But to speak life and love to them, and to see God's grace work in them, then there'll be that overflow, I believe, of God flowing through them.
How do we grow in grace?
Yeah, I think it's an everyday walk. An everyday walk. I mean, I think we're all honest. None of us have arrived on this journey with Jesus. You know, once He's our Savior in our heart, it's an everyday walk. Thank God for yesterday, but today, Lord, I need to take you by the hand. I want to walk with you today and know your voice, know your heart, know your word.
Yeah, that's so good. What's a life message for you? Like it's something that you want to share every time you get the opportunity. Do you have just a message, like if this was your last week, and I hope it's not, but what would you want people to know? Like this is your last will and testament. I wish everybody could hear this from Greg Hubbard.
Well, you know, obviously the big thing was Jesus Christ is your Savior and Lord. That the number one thing that we live and breathe. Want everyone to know. In a personal walk with Jesus Christ, there's their Savior. Of course, that's the given, the obvious. One thing that's a big thing in our lives. Something my dad said to me as a little boy. We weren't believers growing up, and my dad and mom did get saved after I did when I was 17. But I'm standing in front of the house one day as a little boy. The family walked down the street, and my dad, who was a loving man, tender, gentle. Even before he became a believer, just had a tender way. But he looked at me, a family walked down the street, and looked at me and he said, son, don't ever forget that everybody matters. And I had no idea that those words were going to mark my life from my dad. So my prayer is, and I have to remind myself all the time, that it's not about crowds, it's not about, but every person matters. That person in North Carolina, that person in India, Romania, or Africa, but that throughout each day, that every person matters to God. And those words changed my life. You know, how we view people.
And if every person matters to God, then every person should matter to us. Yeah. Well, you've hit on several things already. I wanted to end today with, you had showed us a picture today of a friend of yours who you said is walking away from the Lord right now.
Yeah.
But that you've been very close to. And I just thought it might be a good setup as we end today. If you could sit across the table, what do you wish you could say to him today?
I want to say to him that and again, these are the words of, I believe, paraphrase of Corrie ten Boom, that there's no pit so deep you've fallen into that God can't scoop you up and bring you back in his arms. You know, on our worst day, on your worst day, no one is ever going to love you the way that Jesus does, even right now. And his grace is real, and he puts broken people back together again.
Yeah. You're never too far.
Never too far.
Never too far. To find your way back to God, and you're never too far to start your dreams, and you're never too far to be the person that everyone needs.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Greg, so much for your time. What a joy you are. What an encourager you are. you've been a person I've needed this week. And so I appreciate your kindness and your heart after the Lord. And
honored to be here, man. Thank
wonderful.
you for having us.
You and your wife have a special place in my heart, and so glad to have you on the podcast today. I'm going to remind each of you, as you have been listening today, you're not too far. You're not too far gone. Pick up today and continue tracing to be of value to someone, but also chase after your dream and be the person everyone needs.